Right.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another Monthly on Monday. Today's topic is artificial intelligence in support of teaching and mentoring. And that sounds kind of strange to say artificial intelligence out loud because we all just say AI. But anyway, today's speakers are Dr. Brian Sato and Dr. Mark Warschauer. So Brian Sato is a professor of teaching in the Department of Molecular Biology and Biochemistry. He's Associate Dean in UC Irvine's Division of Teaching Excellence and Innovation, where he oversees instructional professional development for faculty and future faculty across the campus. He earned his BA in molecular biology and cell biology from UC Berkeley and a PhD in cell biology from UC San Diego. And his scholarship focuses on building more equitable and inclusive STEM learning environments, including recent work in CEB, life sciences education, and research in higher education on teaching-focused faculty as agents of departmental change and on links between faculty instructional beliefs and racial equity grade gaps. And also joining us is Mark Warschauer, a distinguished professor of education and director of digital learning lab at UC Irvine, with affiliated appointments in informatics, language science, and psychology. He previously served as associate dean and interim dean of UCI's School of Education, where he helped launch the PhD in education, undergraduate education's science major, and a master's program in artificial intelligence and learning analytics. So I think we're really set up tonight for a great presentation on folks that are really at the forefront of this topic. So please join me in welcoming both Mark and Brian. Okay, yay. So who would like to go first? This is very informal tonight.
Mark, you
I
want to
know
go first?
Sure. Okay, let's see. I'm going to share my screen here and share the sound, and that should work. Okay. You can see that, right?
we can see that.
Okay. Just want to thank my big team and some of our funders for this work. So I started to say this why and how, but I figured nobody in the School of Medicine needs the why. I mean, I think all of you realize that AI is here to stay and going to have a big impact. So I want to talk a little bit about how. And this is the overall framework that we have for implementing in AI, whether in grad school, undergraduate, high school, middle school, whatever. The idea is to really help students understand and don't be afraid to make use of its full capacities, but also to remain in charge. So it's kind of a five-part thing. First, we really urge them to think first. You know, there's a lot of research that it's like anchoring research. If you start by just going to AI, you know, you're gonna go with what it wants you to do. So it's really important for students to think first, to start developing their own ideas, their goals before they start working with AI. The other thing everybody wanted people to become prompt engineers. And what we discovered is it's really important to understand the iterative process, that how you go back and forth to work with AI to really get it to do what you want.
So Mark, could I interrupt you and
Yeah.
ask if you could clarify what is a prompt engineer for us non-aficionados?
A prompt engineer is somebody who is an expert in writing the perfect prompt. So usually a really, really good prompt will give AI an identity, like you are a teacher, or you are a manager, or you are a clinician, you are a nurse practitioner, or you are an X-ray technician, or whatever. And it will tell them, you know, exactly what they do, at what level, with whom. Prompting the right way is helpful, but what's really more important is if it gives you an answer and it's not exactly what you want, you have to go back and ask again and again. The third one is probably the key: to take charge. Yes, AI gets an opinion, but it doesn't get a vote. You know, you need to decide what you want to do and take ownership of it. In our world, there's no blaming anything on AI. check it for bias, check it for accuracy. Really, really good practice. And I'm sure anybody who's used AI a lot knows that. One of the problems with AI is can be very sycophantic, just tell you what it thinks you want to hear and things. And then finally, after you go, and this is important for students after they go through the process to really reflect on it, think what worked well, what didn't work well, what they can do better. So now how do you implement these things? I want to show you a couple of things. One of the things I want to show you is a platform that we developed that anybody at UCI can use. And then I want to show you some resources that whether you want to use this platform or not, that you might find of help. So this is we got a National Science Foundation grant several years ago. Like, we're quick in our digital learning lab. So 6 weeks after ChatGPT was released, we put in a grant at the NSF with the UCI Department of Engineering. They have a class called Writing and Communication for Engineers. It's a writing class that all their majors have to take. And we said, for that, we're going to develop a platform that connects to LLMs on the back end, but is very pedagogically sound and research and evidence-based. And we call that Papyrus AI. And I'm going to show you like a quick little video about it.
AI can be a powerful tool to support or derail student learning depending on how it's used. Papyrus AI was created by University of California experts to support student writing and AI literacy. Unlike many tools, Papyrus AI is intentionally designed to push students' thinking rather than substitute for it. Here's an example from the planning stage of writing. Strong writers don't just think about their own ideas, they anticipate those of their audience. Papyrus AI guides students in considering and addressing counter-arguments, a challenging but essential skill for effective writing. Good writers also continuously refine their arguments through feedback and revision. Using advanced algorithms, Papyrus AI provides rich, targeted suggestions related to content, organization, voice, and style. Through these back-and-forth interactions, students learn to critically evaluate AI feedback, decide what to accept or revise, and engage iteratively with AI to shape their final work. With the guidance of their teachers in Papyrus AI, students learn to be the boss of their own writing. Papyrus AI fully leverages teacher expertise. Instructors shape how students engage with the tool by selecting research-based prompts, modifying existing ones, or creating their own. A teacher dashboard shows when and how students are using Papyrus AI both individually and across a class, supporting timely, targeted instruction. Students and teachers can log in easily using Canvas or Google. From middle school to graduate school, Papyrus AI is a research-based platform that combines strong guardrails with instructor control, helping students think more deeply, write more effectively, and develop the AI literacy needed for college and career success.
So we got a grant from the California Education and Learning Lab, and we're piloting this in about 40 classes at UCI and Cal State Fullerton and Cypress College this year, and we're going to do in about 50 classes next year. Mostly people are using it for writing, but they're using it for a lot of project work, for problem solving. Somebody's doing it for teaching computer programming. But we also have a lot of resources online, and I'm going to share these slides with you at the end so you can get to any of these. But we have a lot of higher education resources on our website, and for example, all the prompts that we have embedded in Papyrus AI to help with planning, writing, or drafting, or revising, or developing presentations. That's probably something important in the School of Medicine, or for multilingual learners, or for teachers and things. These are all prompts that you can use in any. It's all open source. You can use in any LLM, teachers and students. We've got some, activities. We've got like some think first questions to help students learn how to think before they start using AI, some reflection questions. And we've also got like a little introductory curriculum about how LLMs work, with some access to some videos and things like that. The we also have AI in higher education course. It's a 3-unit continuing education course. We're going to offer it every quarter. The next time is going to be this summer. It meets real-time meetings online about 3 hours a week, and like I think it's 4 o'clock one day a week, and then there's other activities and we're going to offer that every summer or quarter. So here's a link to these slides. If you want the slides, and I don't know if Brian or Kathy are going to share this slide presentation with you, but you can get to the slide presentation by just pointing your camera at that, and then you can get to all the links that were in it. And that's just want to make a short little introduction to spark some discussion.
All right, we will share the slides at the end. We can post them on our website, so that'll be fine.
Okay.
All right. Well, does anybody want to ask a question of Mark first, or shall we hear from Brian and then we'll open up the discussion? Just unmute yourself. Be courageous. I know it's late in the day, but I don't see any unmuting, so I guess we will go with your presentation next, Brian, and then open it up for questions.
Great. Let me share my screen. Very happy to be here. As Brian mentioned, I was a biology major. I am a biology major. I wanted to be a doctor. I started doing research and I liked that. And I also figured I wouldn't cut it in med school. So this is as close as I'm going to get to being in the School of Medicine. I appreciate being here. One of the interesting things that we think about from a teaching and learning space, so much of what we do at the Division of Teaching Excellence and Innovation is built on research and literature. And so years upon decades of research showing here are things that one should be doing in the classroom. But in the AI space, we're sort of all learning together. We have folks like Mark who are doing really cutting edge work. But for the most part, we're sort of learning on the ground and talking to people and seeing what problems they're running into, what things are working, what not, even if it's just anecdotal evidence. So talking to folks is one of the best ways that DTI is learning what's out there. So hopefully you're all happy to share your perspectives about what you've been seeing in your classes. This is sort of a primer for folks who are considering using AI in the classroom and sort of the messaging that we provide. If you're unfamiliar with the Division of Teaching Excellence and Innovation, we are a team of folks that is focused on undergraduate courses. So I apologize that maybe we miss you all sometimes, but if there's anything that we can do for you, that any problems you're running into, any sorts of things we can help facilitate, please let us know and we'd be happy to chat. I do want to point out we have a higher education research group, the Perry Institute, which stands for Post-Secondary Education Research and Implementation, assess what's going on in our center and working and is it not. We also serve as external evaluators for externally funded projects. So if you all have education focused programs and you want to see if they're working or not, please reach out and we'd be happy to chat. The campus obviously has been putting a lot of time and effort into thinking about teaching with AI and providing resources. This QR code will take you to the DTI webpage for generative AI for teaching and learning, and there's a decent amount of things that we've stolen from Mark's group and with the work that they're doing. OIT has put together, I'm sure you've heard of ZotGPT, but there's a chatbot specific with ZotGPT, so you could set it up for your course. You can feed it your own prompts, feed it information from your class, so it'll be tailored to what's going on within your course. Michael Denon has put together an advisory committee with faculty from across the campus to really put our ears to the ground and see what's going on. That's led by Daniel Gross out in humanities. And the provost put forward this impact program last fall to help faculty transform their courses using AI. And so $1 million that they wanted to put towards these activities. And so we're starting to ramp up what it is that we're doing on campus and making sure that we're supporting you all. To be honest, when you think about introducing AI in your course, it can seem overwhelming. There's so many different possibilities. so many different ways that AI can be participating in your class and enhancing what's going on, that it often can seem overwhelming, and you might decide, you know what, this is all too much trouble. Let's just keep things going how they're going. One thing we definitely tell folks who are considering AI in the classroom is it's not about the AI, it's about your class. It's what are your goals for your students, and how do you structure your course in a way that allows those students to achieve those goals? How do you assess them to see whether they've achieved those goals? And so AI is very secondary to that. That once you think about, okay, here's what I do and here's why I do it, the next question is, well, how can AI support that? But also considering maybe there are ways that AI is preventing you from doing what you're doing. And so thinking about ways to go around things you traditionally did that maybe you can't do anymore. One of the few things we do, or one of the first things that we tell faculty is you got to have a syllabus policy regarding AI. That this is something that CEP agreed to a month or so ago that we're going to start really advertising a bit more. But you have to have something in your syllabus that tells your students what your expectations are for them in regards to AI. That one of the reasons being transparency. Your students are taking many classes. Each professor has a different idea about what is and is not acceptable. And so forcing them to guess what that is and maybe running into a wall somewhere that they didn't expect is not what we want. So really being clear to your students. Making sure that it's a conversation, that anytime you have your class, you're not saying you have to do this because I said so, that here's the reason that we think this is most supportive for your learning. In the case of AI, it's telling them that, hey, you may be able in the short term to save some time if you're using it for this purpose, but you're really going to hurt yourself in the long term in terms of this learning that you're attempting to bestow on them. And then AI literacy, that each field is starting to have its expectations for here's what is and isn't acceptable. And so we're not just teaching our students content, we're teaching them how to be professionals in a particular field. So making sure they understand what should be going on. And so one of the things we have on our website is just some language that if I don't like if I don't like AI at all, here's some language you can use. If you kind of use it in certain cases, here's what you can use. If you can use it all the time. This image we stole from Northwestern because it's a nice image, but we have language specific for UCI that if you go to our website, you're welcome to steal and put in your syllabus. The other thing I think people are obviously very concerned about is assessment. How is it that we are going to assess in a world where AI can answer all of our questions? And so again, it goes down to, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your learning outcomes? How do we traditionally assess that learning? And does that make sense? I think oftentimes you run into, well, I've just been doing this forever, and so that's the way that I do it. And so maybe we reflect and say, oh, maybe that isn't how I want to do it anymore, and maybe I can change. Or maybe it is the way that you traditionally assessed is the best way to do it. It is still possible to use a lot of traditional assessments. After COVID, a lot of people were switching to using Canvas, online quizzes, and things like that. Some are going back to pencil and paper. Some are saying you can still use your devices, but you have to do it with more supervision. We are on campus piloting a testing center. So it's a room with computers with proctors. And so it's something we're trying out this year with the hopes that by next year we maybe have a testing center for 200 or 300 students where faculty can send their tests and students will sign up for times to take the test, and that way they can do it in a more controlled environment. But we're also really pushing other kinds of assessments. And I imagine in your settings, these might be possible, a little bit more possible than my 400 person lower division class I'm teaching right now. But things like portfolios and presentations, group activities, practicals, maybe switching things up from how you traditionally did it to sort of fight against what AI is capable of. I did briefly want to share what I do in my classroom. So I am not an innovator in any sense, but I am willing to think about things and try things. So one of the things I always have a conversation with my students that AI is going to be a key part of their future. So they do need to become familiar with it. We're all sort of learning together, but it is something that we just can't ignore. And so it's not on my part to tell them they have to ignore it. They're welcome to use it, but they are responsible for verifying if things are and aren't correct. We can't just blindly follow it. And that in my classes, development of critical thinking skills is key. So lower division intro courses, I don't really care if they know content, but I want them to be able to design experiments. I want them to be able to analyze data. And so I have a lot of smaller assignments where they could toss those in ChatGPT and it'll probably spit out the right answers. And they may save some time and get some points, but that when they take the exams where they won't have access to it, they're going to sell themselves short. And so really reinforcing to them constantly that building critical thinking skills is something that takes time, it takes failure, it takes patience. And so skipping those steps isn't going to help them. I do assess fairly traditionally 400 people, so we do multiple choice sort of Scantron type tests. Everything is open note. They can have their devices, but they can't be connected to the network. And so basically, we just have a dozen or so proctors that are walking around the classroom, making sure that not doing things they aren't supposed to. I do teach lab classes too, where writing is a big component of it. And I tell them you can use AI as you'd like for the writing, but just let us know how you're using it. And so they'll have a little AI statement for how they claim they used it. But from my perspective, if they can write better using AI, then more power to them. I am trying out some of the class chat stuff. So we actually, OIT and DTI has partnered on putting together some workshops. It's two 90-minute workshops, and they sort of tell you all the different things you can do with it. So I'm going to build a syllabus chatbot so I don't have to answer all the same questions over and over, and then a study guide generator. So it seems pretty straightforward. It seems like, again, I am not an innovator, but it seems pretty easy to use, and I just have to set aside an afternoon to put those together, and it should be pretty doable. And so, like I said, I'm happy to be here, and hopefully you're all willing to share what you've got going on.
All right. Well, thank you. We do have a question in the chat. Crystal, do you want to unmute and ask it yourself?
Sure. Something that I think about quite a bit. I do not teach undergraduates. More of my experiences with medical graduate students and early career folks. And something that I think about quite a bit is the use of AI in the age of still trying to foster critical thinking. And how to best do that, knowing that AI is a tool, but their thinking is really what is supposed to drive their AI use. And I'm wondering, do you have any uh, thoughts on that, practical tips, ways that I can improve, or just anything around that topic of that interface between thinking and AI?
Yeah, so I would say for sort of general critical thinking, it's our responsibility to give students lots of opportunities to practice in a space where it's very low stakes. They don't worry about grades, they don't worry about points. Um, I imagine I'm interested to see what you have to say, Mark, because pretty soon our kids are going to grow up only in a world where AI has existed. We're in this sort of weird period where they've picked up some skills already, particularly if you're talking postgraduate folks. They built a lot of those skills pre-AI, and so we're less worried about them. But at some point, we have to figure out how do we teach the 5-year-olds who have had AI all the time how to build those skills. So, Mark, maybe you know the answer already.
Yeah, well, I think, when you do classroom conversations about things, before you start on something new, some discussions, group work or pair work or classroom discussions, but ways for students to start, exploring their own ideas about things before. I mean, it's natural that they're going to use AI to do things, and that's what they're going to do in careers. I'm just working on a proposal with somebody, and that was the next draft I got. But we had a lot of discussion about what we wanted to do first. So I think having those discussions in classrooms is cool. We're also experimenting with my lab. I don't have anything to report yet about, yeah, I got it from a paper somebody called Fighting Fire with Fire, but a way to use AI itself to promote critical thinking by, I don't know how big your classes are, but oral interviews are a really good way to, dig into people's thoughts patterns, but that can be hard to scale. So this person developed something and we're going to develop something, try it out, is, individualized interviews, AI-based interviews about the thinking behind students' projects and their readings and other things. AI-based interviews and AI-based grading of those interviews is a way of scaling up, pushing students' thinking about the work that they do.
Thank you.
All right, so I was wondering, like a lot of our folks, they're much smaller. They're not classes of 40 or 100, but they're teaching one-on-one, or they're teaching groups of residents, and they're on research or clinical service duties and don't have have very limited time. So if someone was just starting out and had 30 minutes a month to experiment with AI in teaching, what would you recommend that they start with? How do we simplify this and get them on?
I think it's always better to use a tool for yourself before you have using it with students. So I would use AI, to start developing their lesson plans, to start, use it as a thinking partner to think about what they want to teach, to get ideas about how they might structure it, what activities they might want to teach, how they might structure their lessons. That's what I would do if I had a half hour a month.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree. I think with courses of that size or where you're dealing with like individual students, I think it's also just an opportunity to have a conversation with the students and say like, what do you think? How have you been using it? What do you think I could be doing to enhance the learning experience? And it might be something where you've got these students who are probably more adept at using it than we are, potentially teaching us lessons about what we should be doing.
I wonder if any of the clinicians would be willing to share with. I presume that all of their residents and all the med students are already using AI, and it's the faculty that need to catch up. So, anybody have any experience with that? Willing to share?
I can share. So I'm the program director, fellowship program director in allergy and immunology. So we have been using AI a lot in our presentations, preparing publications, and preparing questions like quizzes too. Um, so it's been helpful, but I always tell the fellows like you need to double check how accurate the questions and answers are, and then the paper is. So we are trying to focus on that too, and it's been helpful. It's like really game changing tool for us. I have a question. So some things I want to use AI to in the fellowship program, like lecture schedules. Um, or preparing a question bank. Is that AI course like you are offering, Mark? Will it teach that kind of stuff, like preparing your own AI agent, for example?
Yes,
Agent?
we include that in that. Yes.
Okay. Do you have any examples, any projects that was completed through that course before?
The course is being offered the first time this summer.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
So
No
you
problem.
can be the guinea pig.
But I think that how to use various AI agents, whether OpenAI's agent or Google's agent or Papyrus AI, or to create your own mini AIs. I think that would be an important part of it. And if you're interested in learning more, I can introduce you to Tamara Tate, my colleague. She's the associate director of the lab, the person in the lab who's heading up a lot of our work on generative AI. And you can talk to her about the class. Would you like me to introduce you?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay.
Is it free?
No.
Okay, of
No,
course.
but we do take recharge accounts if you have a
Right. Okay,
uh,
no
How
problem.
much is how much is it going to be, Mark?
There's a discount for UCI. I think it's I'm gonna check. I don't want to misspeak. It's I think $500 for UCI
Okay.
faculty. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Have our division pay for it, probably.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just make sure
Yeah.
they agree in
Yes.
advance.
Yes. All right.
Mohammed, please.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for a great presentation. Quick question. How do we balance between writing test questions or assessing people, knowing that there's AI, right? So it gets to the point where you kind of make questions with AI in the back of your mind, when sometimes we just need to ask a very basic question, get basic skills across. So is that something that you teach also too, in terms of it's fine if these 50 out of 100 questions are pretty much the student gets them, because in the real world, they'll use AI quite a bit. We want to teach them to utilize it effectively, but I also want them to be able to think on their feet, right? And not always have a partner or an assistant on the computer at their side. So how do you strike that balance between assessing the basic fundamental skills and also teaching, knowing, testing, knowing that they're going to use AI and kind of trying to get above that hurdle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a colleague who spends a lot of time trying to AI proof his questions, and so he's got like this series of characteristics that a question must have to make it as AI proof as possible, which it seems like a lot of work. And like you said, these are all people who, when they're in their professional space, are going to have access to other resources and AI. And so whether or not it's important that we really nail that down now. Um, I mean, obviously, you want a range of questions in your assessments, and so you might say that, yeah, these are just freebies, and that's okay, and hope everyone to get them regardless of whether they're using AI or not. If you're really convinced to do it or whatever it is that you're testing them. So if you really care that they know all the names of these things or sort of more fact-based things, you can adjust how you're assessing them and make them do it in person in front of you. But honestly, I don't spend a ton of time worrying about that because those are the things that even if they don't know them, they'll figure it out soon enough in the real world with whatever supports they're using.
I concur.
Thank you both.
So I would ask both Mark and Brian about, is there any evidence on AI tutoring or augmented feedback, grading of lab reports? Does this improve learning outcomes? Mark, we were mentioning before the audience arrived that students like it in one sense that it's instant feedback. On the other hand, they like talking to an actual faculty member. So where is the data on that?
I would say it's too big a question and too explosive a topic to answer definitively at this point. I'm going to say, it probably all depends. There's probably 100 studies being published on this right now. I mean, just to give you a sense, right now, some colleagues and I are working on a meta-analysis of all the meta-analyses which have been published on this. So even though it's a new topic, it's just exploding. So I don't have the definitive answer to that, but it probably depends a lot on how you. I would say in general, like unstructured use of LLMs is not productive. If students are just going out to ChatGPT and finding the answers and finding them again and again and again, that's probably hurting their learning. But structured use of pedagogically designed LLMs, it tends to be productive for learning.
I mean, I guess from my perspective, it's also the question of what do we mean by learning now? So anecdotally from my lab classes, the quality of the reports are getting better. And so presumably AI has had a part in that. But I also say when I do my writing, there are spaces where I'll use AI to help me out on something that I'm struggling with. And so is writing in the presence of AI now considered writing? And if so, in my class that's improving versus is writing you're going to sit there with a blue book and answer this essay question. So I think it's also a question of as instructors, what do we view as learning or writing or whatever it may be?
Well, so to clarify that for me and maybe the audience, but for my perspective, I remember, of course, that pen and paper math tables and calculators were outrageous. And then you could use a calculator because the problems were harder. And then everybody had a calculator. And now your phone has a calculator. Spell checking, it's the same thing. So is this just the new tool versus I'm actually worried that it's the new tool that's so good that no thinking is required or no analysis of the output is required. So that's where because I would say, NIH has said you can't use AI in your grant writing. Well, not to write the whole grant, but of course you're going to use AI to help you analyze the scientific literature that's the foundation of your hypothesis and pull in new papers. So where are we going to draw these boundaries? You kind of mentioned, Brian, it was like, are you writing? I think I'm writing when Grammarly tells me a better way to write my sentence and I say I don't agree with you.
I certainly don't think that we have destroyed the need for human thinking
Yet.
Maybe we'll get there in a few hundred years. I mean, it's kind of an analogy to the calculator, except 1,000-fold or something. Some of you are, well, none of you except maybe Brian are old enough to remember the mass moral terror when calculators came out in math education and nobody knew what to do with them. And then we realized that kindergartners don't need to don't need to use calculators. Graduate students don't need to multiply 3-digit numbers by hand. And somewhere along the way, maybe about middle school, high school students needed to learn how to use calculators, and they needed to how to do some stuff with and some stuff without. And they would have test questions that included them and test questions that didn't include them. And there's kind of this process of things. In that sense, yeah, I mean, a calculator can outsource your computing or your calculating, an LLM can outsource your entire thinking. So it's a lot more complicated, but it's still, I figure by the time people are in medical school or some sort of medical education, they should be at the far end of the curve. I mean, we can't be holding their hand through everything. So, yes, we need to have these discussions about when and how and to use them for what. But at some point, we have to take the stance that kind of Brian seems to be taking, which is, at some point they need to take responsibility for their own learning. And hopefully, if we've taught them well, they won't want to. I mean, if they'll want to outsource their learning, it's maybe in things that aren't important to them. But I think if they're involved in the medical school, hopefully most of the stuff they're learning is of some value to them.
I'm curious, in medical school, or I guess once they finish medical school and they're out working with patients, are there spaces where the field says you better not touch AI?
Clinical faculty, you want to tackle that? I mean, I know, so I was just at the new medical center on Jamboree where the doctor came in and said, if you don't mind, I'm going to use AI to record this conversation and it'll present a transcript for us at the end and it'll be in my medical record. And I thought that was great because I've gone in for exams where the doctor's sitting at the terminal and looking at the screen more than me. So I had a much better conversation when AI was involved, but I'm not a clinician. How about any clinicians want to reveal themselves and tell it? Yeah, go ahead.
This is Greg Albers here. Yeah, I'd be on I just had cancer surgery on my face. I don't feel like going online, but I don't mind speaking up for sure today. I have not yet had a chance to use the ambient AI systems, but they're almost universal and patients love them. Doctors love them, but they only summarize that which you discuss right then and there. There's going to be another phase or two, and it'll be probably integrated in Epic sooner than later. I've heard is that we're basically like, as a consultant, as a GI doctor, I walk in the door, patient's already had 6 colonoscopies, 4 CAT scans, 3 MRIs, a couple PET scans, has 16 pathology reports, and I'm supposed to review that entire, whatever in before I walk in the door for a 30-minute visit. Obviously, it might take me an hour to review all that data before I meet them. And so at 2 o'clock in the morning, I go to sleep. I wake up at 5. I go and meet them. That's not really optimal use of my time, and it leads to burnout. So sometimes we're not allowed to use it now, but I think in the future the capacity of an AI agent in that is HIPAA compliant in that is inside of Epic can kind of summarize the big picture of all the data that we have. I think it'll allow us to be thinkers and interactors with our patients a lot better. And the patients, I think, will really enjoy us not looking at the results of a CAT scan from 2024, comparing it to 2025. I think that they will enjoy us actually integrating with a conversation about their symptoms and their problems and interval symptoms. I just think that it's a capability that we have yet to even realize all of the potential benefits. I mean, maybe I don't deny there's some downsides where you could maybe use it to cut corners, but I do believe I'm looking forward to the time where I don't have to spend an hour and a half reviewing, literally some people bring 3,000 pages of records in. How can you do that? How can you summarize 3,000 pages of records of before you see a patient? So I'm looking forward to an AI that will do that for me. Right now, it's just an ambient AI, kind of like it's an AI scribe. That's basically what they are. Some places will, you'll be capable of actually giving options, considerations, and opinions, but we're not obliged to take any of them. But that I don't think our current AI scribe is at that level. It's more of a it's more of a scribe level scenario, more so than a thinking agent, if you will. But I see the good in it. That's from my perspective as a GI clinician in the clinic. One downside in the GI lab, we've been using AI in colonoscopy for a couple years now, and we're finding a lot of what I call colon zits. And it makes our adenoma detection rate great, makes our scorecard great. We look really good on these local national scorecards, but finding a 2 millimeter adenoma, I'm not sure of helping people out. And we might be missing a 1 centimeter flat serrated polyp in the right colon that'll turn into cancer in 3 years. So I think that sometimes these AI agents are kind of like we're box hunting, and it's de-skilling our intrinsic, like, to me, my eye brain communication can find a serrated polyp better than I think any AI agent out there. But the more you rely on these AI agents, I think we're going to get de-skilled to some extent, if not maybe too dependent on the AI program. And patients demand them. Right now there are a lot of places in private practices you pay an extra $100 to get an AI added on, and that's just the way it is. It's $100. If you want it, you get it. If you don't want it, you don't pay the 100. So Medicare won't pay for it. Medicare pays the same price. So you flip the switch for AI, and then you charge them $100, or you can use AI and not charge them, I guess. But a lot it's kind of like when you go to the eye doctor, you want an OCT, that's extra $35. But it's kind of like an add-on. But that's being done now. But I think there's more and more data showing that it is to some extent either desensitizing us or de-skilling us. And I'm worried about that for these young doctors, because I'll tell you, the sessile serrated polyp is a flat polyp. They're hard to see. You got to be I show them. Dr. Albers, your eyes. Now I'm colorblind a little bit, so maybe I have learned over the years to be a little bit more sensitive, and maybe I have different wavelength variations, and I can see changes in architecture of these flat polyps. But I really am scared that box hunting on a virtual colonoscopy, as an AI based colonoscope exam, is gonna have some impact, and some might be definitely good, but I think it's just going to improve their scorecards, may not improve eventual outcomes of advanced adenomas and flat, hidden, difficult to discern polyps. So we face these things, right? The realities of these things right now. We're finding now data on the de-skilling and the, and then the young learners that were out there, we don't have it at UCI because it's $1,000 per room. So if we're running 20 rooms, that's $20,000 a month. We have to, and then we don't get paid for it. So we're going to lose 20 grand a month just to use it. There's no way that UCI is going to, approve 20 grand a month for not non-reimbursable. That's not going to happen anytime soon. In private practice, they use it because they charge extra for it. But it's in use currently, and there's some data that it does improve. There's increasing data that it does. So both in the clinic, I see the boon, and then I see the challenges for things that are low incidence conditions like Barrett's esophagus with dysplasia. I don't think the average doctor sees dysplasia more than maybe 10 or 20 times in their career. How can they see it in a 5-minute upper endoscopy? They're not going to see it. Their brains are just not, pattern recognized. And then the AI is crowdsourcing, 100,000 cases and the experts of the world to find a very flat dysplastic lesion. I think, low incidence conditions, I think it may be a benefit, but for high prevalence conditions, we might be just improving our scorecard in some regard and actually de-skilling in other regards.
Thanks for that input. That was actually quite interesting. Dr. Rivera, sorry.
You're fine. It's funny that you mentioned this because I was just finishing up on a paper that I'm submitting about how we use the AI in medical education to do simulation training, where we've engineered some prompts for simple training scenarios, and the students can interact with it like a simulation, where the AI changes the patient's scenario and case, and and then they have to tell it what they want to do, and then get the feedback based on how the patient's status changes and things like that. So I like this a lot. I've been using this is something I've been using in medical education, but we also have set protocols for the clinical environment for our residents. So we don't let our first or second year residents use the AI in terms of generating their differential diagnoses. So we've kind of set rules around that when they are allowed to start using it, because the abridged tool that we use allows us to, work like a scribe, like was said before, and but it will also allow you to generate a physical exam and a differential diagnosis. It just actually requires you to talk a lot of what you're doing out, which I personally feel is really helpful for patients because it allows us to discuss okay, I'm thinking about this differential. This is what I'm looking for. Here's how your questions answer that. Okay, I'm doing this physical exam to look for signs of this. I'm doing this ultrasound to look for these things. And it actually, if you call it out to the ambient recorder while you're doing it, it generates a very profound and robust differential. And then the patient's along with the ride, because as someone who's very interested in AI use in medicine, I also follow social media and what people are saying in social media about it. And there's a really big split among patients about their receptivity to us recording the conversations, even if it helps us to develop the notes. I see on a lot of social media posts, people saying that they think it's absolutely ridiculous that doctors aren't willing to type up notes and things like that. So I do the same thing as others have said. I say to the patient, this allows me just to focus on you and examine you and use both hands and not worry about the computer. And patients tend to be okay with it, but I still do. I'd say it's about 70-30. I get a couple of, curious eyebrows or strange concerns about recording and how long the recordings last. And these are things that we have to know in order to use them. So those are some ways that we're implementing it clinically.
So are there demographics to that? Is it an older population, or you can't predict who does and doesn't like having AI as part of their exam?
Yeah, my limited experience is that, if I said clinically, my experience would be that younger patients tend to be a little bit hesitant sometimes. And I don't actually see a lot of times the older patients just trust us and are chill with whatever we want to do. But sometimes younger patients who are more familiar with technology have some hesitations. But on social media, it's really interesting. I think I would say that patients who tend to have very complex needs medically and maybe psychosocially as well tend to be the ones who distrust the technology and don't want to make the job easier for the physicians, as opposed to people who are if it makes the appointment more effective and more efficient, I'm happy to do it. These are the same people who would complain if they see you looking up their very rare condition that nobody really knows about, but they're mad that you didn't know it from off the top of your head. So I think there may be some psychosocial parts to that as well.
indeed. Anybody else have a question before I ask another one? Jeff, you seem very, very absorbed there. Let
That's
me
right.
ask.
It's a fantastic session.
Yeah, from a faculty development standpoint, what's the realistic sequence for bringing mid-career faculty who might be skeptical about this or that have zero confidence? How do you bring them along? And how long would it actually take to get folks comfortable with using AI in their teaching?
Brian's the expert in faculty development, the expert in the world in faculty development. So I'm going to
Not
let
at
him answer
all.
this
But
question.
I mean, the interesting thing is a lot of it is cultural, right? Like teaching is a very personal thing. We teach the way we teach because of various beliefs. And so it can be very difficult to convince someone who absolutely doesn't want to do something to do it, much like convincing someone to eat differently or exercise or whatever if they don't see the value. I think one piece is that you can't just say, well, everyone's using AI, so you better use AI. So really asking them, what are you currently doing in regards to your teaching? Are there any pain points? I think if they can see a benefit to using AI, they might say, well, I don't want to globally use it, but for this particular facet, I'm going to use it just to save time. I'd also say we don't, at this point, you don't necessarily need to force people to use AI just for the sake of doing it. I would say culturally, we should be okay with our students for the most part using AI. It is very interesting when you talk to faculty about students using it. Often it's, well, my students are cheating by using AI. But when they say, oh, but I helped me write my grant and I'm so smart that I used it to help me write my grant, it's very different our perspectives on what we do versus what our students do. So I think if anything, not necessarily getting faculty to use it, but getting them to soften their perspectives on how it might help their students learn.
You didn't want to use the word hypocritical. That was very nice of you, but like, don't do as I do, just do as I say. So if a faculty member came to you folks and said, I want to replace part of my small group teaching with an AI tutor so I can free up my time to write more grants and bring in more indirect costs. What would your response be to that? Would you tell them what are the trade-offs for the students, for the faculty members, or for the institution if we farm out some of our teaching/grading to AI bots?
Yeah, I think as long as so I think the grading is one place that in particular we could end up shifting a lot of responsibility to AI. I think if you've got data to show that grading with an AI produces similar outcomes to human grading. I think people vastly overestimate the human skill in grading. Like we make mistakes all the time, and students, I think Mark has mentioned this before, students don't like it when a human doesn't touch their paper, but ultimately the AI might be better than what they're getting from the humans, and people just don't realize it. So I think if you have data showing that it's not harming the students, then that's a great use of it. I wouldn't tell your students you're doing it so you can spend more time on your research. They don't like that. But if you can show that it's equivalent to what you're producing, and I think you can use it as so not just that the AI is replacing me, but you're giving the students an opportunity potentially to interact with AI and the importance of that for their future. That we need to figure out the best way that students can leverage AI in their own learning. And so if you can replace you as the instructor in one sense, and it's a way that teaches them how to interact with AI that's going to be helpful to their future. If you message it that way, I think that's the way to do it.
I wanted to
So you
mention one
mentioned,
other thing. Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Greg.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
go
So,
ahead.
yeah, I went to the Department of Medicine social gathering recently at Dr. Desai's house. And it's interesting. I was surrounded by a number of, hospitalist educators who were just there's a vacuum of need for them to develop teaching aids to be able to teach students, teach residents. And there may be a topic that might come up, and then all of a sudden at night they have to spend hours putting together a so-called PowerPoint presentation to be able to help to visually educate the next day or the next week. And I showed them some very insightful sites that I could, make basically the best slides that I've ever seen in my life, using AI, using Gemini Pro and Notebook LLM to create the most stunning visuals and most, I thought, visually, educational slide decks I've ever produced in my career, hands down, bar none. They were just amazed by this. Dr. Harding told me it was going to transform the methods by which it will make him a better teacher, a better educator. And he didn't know that until I was sitting down with him around the fireplace at Dr. Desai's backyard. And I just thought that, this faculty educational series is very good. This should be, part A of an entire series of how we can be educators, under our I think that, we're not in a post-knowledge world, but we're in an easy knowledge world. We need to be able to kind of integrate that into our teaching and give it our flavor and be able to bring those points really clear to them. And sometimes it takes a lot of work on our part, as everyone knows, to put together a 35 slide, deck to be able to, elucidate the newest data on the IV fluids in acute pancreatitis, getting all the data, the pros and the cons, the waterfall file, whatever you want. But I'm saying is that is a very difficult topic. And, you only have so much time after you go home, after you're finished rounds. And these guys there was a vacuum of need that I found from all of the teacher educators that were around the fireplace at that time. So they were going to look up some of the advances in my suggestions of approaches and things. So there's this vacuum. I think, irrespective of who's on the call right now, there is this vacuum of desire out there, I believe, in the clinician educators there.
Well, if folks haven't used Notebook LLM, I can attest to that one. So we put together, and it's not only can it create slideshow, but if you take slide decks, so we had a faculty mentoring academy for clinicians last week, hosted with Nimish Parek and I, and we just put everybody's slides from different presentations into one slide deck and said, make this harmonized so it all looks the same. And it did an amazing job, and much, much faster than I could do. But if there's we're at time here. If there's any last burning question, I would say quickly unmute yourself and ask it. Otherwise, I'll pause for a second. All right, I want to thank our speakers, Dr. Mark Warschauer and Dr. Brian Sato, for helping lead a very thoughtful discussion, and hope AI gets even more useful in the future. I'm looking forward to it myself, but I'm also a little bit scared about it. We'll see where we end up.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.